Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to educate you about the Baker Act and your rights or lack thereof, and explain why, in reality, you don't have any rights and neither does your loved one. So this is a follow-up video to the one I just put out. In that video, I talked about what rights are outlined in the Baker Act statute, which is Chapter 394. And I said to you, effectively, you really don't have any rights, even though in the legislation, in the statute, which is Chapter 394, it says that you do. And so the question that was then asked to me, well, if you're saying that we really don't have any of the rights that the statute has given us, why is that? And there's two reasons why you really don't have any rights. The first of which is that nobody actually knows that your loved one's there. And I know that you might know. Sometimes actually a family doesn't know where their loved one is. I've had many a call where law enforcement was called to the scene. They took the person and refused to disclose where they were taking them to. Or somebody was Baker Acted at an emergency room, and because that particular hospital didn't have a behavioral health unit, they were transferring them to an actual Baker Act receiving facility. And again, the hospital said, we're not going to tell you where we're sending them. So sometimes the family doesn't know where they are, but most of the time they're going to. So when I tell you that nobody actually knows that your family member's there, what I mean is there's no oversight. Nobody is watching the hospital or the police or the Baker Act facility to make sure they don't violate any of these rights, to make sure that it's actually done legally. Unlike the criminal system, where if you get arrested and taken to the county jail and you can't post a scheduled bond, within 24 hours, you get to see a judge. Right, or your loved one would get to see a judge. The person that's been arrested gets to see a judge to address three things. Number one, probable cause. Was the arrest actually legal? Number two, the right to an actual lawyer. And number three, what are reasonable conditions of release? Because you get arrested, just because you've been arrested doesn't mean, say, you actually committed a crime. In fact, you're presumed innocent. And so we don't want to house you, incarcerate you before there's actually been a finding of guilt. So we want to make sure that we let you go, but we want to make sure that you come back, right? And if there's a victim, an alleged victim in the case, we want to make sure that you stay away. So in the criminal case, somebody actually knows you're there because within 24 hours, the case is going to go in front of a judge, right? It has to. And the court system and, the judges and the criminal system is all working together in this whole process that's outlined in the rules of procedure. Well, none of that applies to a Baker Act. How crazy is that, right? Your loved one has done nothing wrong, or you've done nothing wrong, and yet you don't get any of the protections you would get in a criminal case, not out of the gate. So when I tell you that nobody actually knows your loved one's there, that's what I mean. Nobody is watching. No judge, no jury, no lawyer, none of that stuff. None of it applies. So nobody is watching to make sure this is done correctly. And here's the icing on the cake. Here's the second reason why effectively in the real world, you don't have any rights. Your loved one has no rights. And it's because the police are agents of the state's mental health system. The hospital is an agent of the state's mental health system. The Baker Act receiving facility is an agent of the state's mental health system, even if they are a private entity for profit. They are licensed as an agent of the state's mental health system. And as such, they enjoy sovereign immunity. What does that mean? It means that as a general rule, you can't sue them for this. You cannot sue them for doing it wrong. You cannot sue them for violating all of the rights that I talked about in the other video, which is why I'm telling you, you really don't have any rights, even though it says you do. You cannot sue them for this. And I can't tell you how frustrating this is for us, because we get 2 or 3 calls a day, messages through the websites from folks that have been wrongfully detained. Their rights have clearly been violated, and there's nothing I can do about it. Okay? Now, if somebody was injured in a facility, that's a little bit different. I had a woman that was raped. I had somebody else that was beaten up. That's different. And the reason it's different is because the facility actually has a duty to keep you safe. So it's not a violation of the actual statute, right? The Baker Act statute, or it's a different kind of claim, right? Because they have a duty to keep you safe. Even if they did it legally or illegally, they still got to keep you safe. and make sure that you come out in this, in one piece, right? So these are the two reasons why effectively, even though the statute says you have rights, you don't. You really don't have any rights, which is why in just about every video I've ever made about the Baker Act, I am very adamant about fighting like hell to get out of the Baker Act, okay? Whether it was legal or illegal, if you don't fight to get out, then these are the consequences, because causes have effects and effects have consequences. And so I'm a big believer. You fight and fight and fight to get out. And that means you're going to need to go to court. You're going to need to drag the facility kicking and screaming in front of a judge. And if they're not going to capitulate when they see that you've done that, then I guess there's going to be a hearing. Now, as a former prosecutor, I've tried hundreds of jury trials. And for a long time, when I started doing this work, I was running all over the state, wiping the floor with the doctors in these facilities because they were just violating rights. The two associates I have, they're both skilled trial lawyers. So if we have to litigate a case, we will. Most of the time that doesn't happen, but every once in a while I get a facility that wants to test me and test my team. And having had a family member Baker acted and been there when it happened, I promise you we will not back down from the fight. So anyway, with that said, if you have any comments or questions, post them. I read every one of them. I typically try to get back with folks within 24 hours. If you like the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you subscribe to the channel, you get to see more of this content, which I put out for free on my own dime so that you can get the information you need. Anyway, with that said, I appreciate you for tuning in. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.